The states of Senegambia. The people of Senegal, Gambia, and Guinea were originally Negroes belonging to West Atlantic group. Later, they were mixed with the Mende, Berbers, and Arab immigrants. Most of the area came under the control of the Mali Empire in the 14th century, and part of it was ruled by Songhai in the 16th century. This had important results. For example, permanent commercial links were established with Western Sudan. Secondly, the states developed kingship patterns and many of other common political traditions. Senegambia Coast was the first area in West Africa to be reached by Islam. Thereafter, Islam became strongly established in some states. The Senegambia Coast was also the first part of West Africa to be visited by Europeans in the 15th century. The French and British established trading posts at the mouth of rivers Senegal and Gambia. By 1800, the foreigners had dominated trade on both rivers and had begun penetrating into the interior. The major states that developed in the Senegambia region included Wolf Empire and Fula states. The origin of Wolf Empire is not clear and based on myth, legends, and traditions. Tradition accounts among the Wolf agree that the founder of the empire was Ndianyana Ndiaye. The foundations of the empire were sent down by the voluntary association of several small states, beginning with Wallo in the north. The empire emerged soon after 300 AD in the Senegambia Valley. It is thought that the Wolf people originated from Sahara before it became hostile to farming due to desertification. Ndiaye is said to have emerged from the lake to solve a quarrel among the Wolf states over wood. He divided the wood fairly among the states. They offered him marriage and kingship, and the king of Sine and Salum gave him the name Yanin. Ndiaye became the pioneer king of the Wolf. He used his opportunity to unite the different groups and states into one empire or large political entity. There were 5 Wolf states, and these included Wallo, Jolof, Balo, Kaira, and Salum. All these Wolf states were not under one overall king. Through conquest, however, the king of Wolf took over the states which were originally under his control and formed the Wolf Empire. The empire became strong as a result of the growing transatlantic trade. Wolf Empire had fertile soils which favored and developed. There was enough food which led to the origin of this empire. The people participated in fishing on rivers Senegal and Gambia. They also participated in trade with people from the north and the coast, which brought in wealth and guns that led to her rise. The Wolf state grew, became stronger and richer due to trade with European merchants along the Atlantic coast in the Wolf area starting by the middle of the 15th century. The trade brought in wealth and guns used for defense and expansion. From about 1506, the Portuguese brought horses, cotton, goods, and others manufactured goods to the coast of West Africa. In exchange, the Portuguese got slaves from the Wolf area. Slave trade under Portuguese first became important in the 14th century. The Wolf emperors controlled all the trade with the Europeans, and therefore they became very rich. They acquired revenue and guns from this trade. The revenue obtained from the trade was used by the emperors to raise and strengthen armies, which were used to expand and defend the empire. The army controlled the vassal states and the growing trade with Europeans. The empire had leaders who united the people against external attacks. The strong leaders included Buba Jalof. The unity created made the Wolf people to fiercely resist an attack by her neighbors. The empire experienced orders, peace and stability due to strong system of justice. Therefore, the empire rose and expanded in size. Wolf had an effective administration which led to her rise and expansion. The conquered states regarded themselves as part of Wolf and could not struggle to break away. The nobles who were elected had the powers to check the king. The oppressive and dictatorial king was opposed by the nobles. By the 16th century, the Wolf had an army of 10,000 horsemen and 100,000 men in its infantry. With an army of this size, the Wolf Emperor effectively controlled and expanded his empire. Islam was introduced by the 14th century but became stronger in the 19th century. For example, the leaders of Kayo and Wolf were converted to Islam and they encouraged their subjects to become Muslims. The area was geographically good as it was between two rivers. There was fishing in rivers Senegal and Gambia. They carried out farming, which provided food and trade items. The organization of the Wolf Empire. Wolf had an elaborate or defined system of organization. The king was backed up by a number of nobles from the noble family. Therefore, the king reigned or ruled as long as he pleased the nobles. The king of the Wolf was elected by the noblemen from the royal family. The king's title was Boba. Once elected, the king's power was absolute with semi-divine powers. The nobles could dethrone the king anytime. The office of the king was elective and not hereditary. Therefore, his death was often kept secret to avoid succession wars. In order to try and protect himself against the nobles, the king became autocratic. Women were important in administration of Wolf. For example, the queen mother and the king's sister presided over women's affairs, notably adultery and insubordination. The king appointed local chiefs to rule over chiefs who were not often of noble origin. The duties of chiefs included tax collection, which was in form of cattle, grains, and native clothes. They were also rewarded with wives, presents, and kept part of the taxes. The king had an army consisting of the infantry and cavalry. It was armed with guns from trade. With this army, the Wolf Emperor was in position to control all the states and he used it to defend and expand the empire. Wolf was a class society. It had freeborn and slave classes. The freeborn people in the empire were classified as royals, nobles, peasants, and blacksmiths. There was a large slave class and the Wolf rulers often sold the men and women captured in the war. There were no intermarriages between the different classes in society. Wolf people were originally pagans. Islam made little headway among them until the late 19th century. Some converted to Muslims, however, continued to practice traditional religion and customs. Salt was the main commodity traded by the Wolf people. Other imported commodities included rice, fish, and manufactured goods like clothes. In exchange, the Europeans got slaves, nuts, iron from Africa. The Wolf were able to dominate trade with the Europeans until the middle of the 19th century. Taxes were imposed on traders and Fulani headsmen who were known as Ful or Fulbe. The conquered people paid tributes to the central government. The local industries also contributed revenue to the government. They carried out fishing, hunting, and farming. They grew crops for food and kept animals such as cattle, goats, and horses. Local weaving, jewelry, and leather industries were established. Therefore, Wolf had a strong economy. The French began to build forts along River Senegal. From 1857 to 1858, Kaya was conquered by the French, and within 10 years all the Wolf states were under French control. Hence, Wolf became a French colony. The decline of the Wolf Empire. The empire declined as a result of a number of factors which were both internal and external. The empire started declining in about 1882 when late Dwera, the ruler, was deposed by the French. The central government and the army had weakened due to political vacuum. Late Dwera disagreed with the French when they began to build a railway line into the interior. He knew very well that building the railway line meant extension of colonial rule in his empire. The French deposed late Dwera and replaced him with their own ruler. The new ruler was weak and promoted French rule in Wolf. However, late ruler continued to fight a guerrilla warfare until his death in 1891. The wars in Wolf Empire contributed to the decline in the economy. Trade, agriculture, and local industries were disrupted. Wolf lost a lot of revenue, which further weakened her. There was widespread of famine, which led to the decline of Wolf Empire. The abolition of slave trade led to the decline of Wolf Empire. The economy weakened because it depended on wealth from slave trade. The revenue from the slaves was used to finance the administration and the army. The spread of Islam in Wolf Empire also led to her decline. Wolf Empire experienced a decline in traditional culture which had created unity. The cultural decline in Wolf led to the collapse of the empire. The political struggles and conflicts led to the decline of the empire. There were political disagreements between the princess and the prince. This undermined the powers of the king and led to the decline of central government. After Dwera's death, the decline lost its power. There was a weakness in the army and it could not fight back because the French had superior weapons. There was also a decline in trade which cut off supply of guns and contributed to the fall of the empire. The empire was too large for effective administration, and the leader who could not administer a very large empire effectively. The vassal states took advantage of the wars and instability in the empire and declared their independence. For example, vassal states of Mandika and Serel. Hence, the empire lost tributes from vassal states, leading to her decline.